Joyful Danish. Stay human. Is it even still possible to stay human? Maybe. It's not too late. Great. All right. Welcome to Joyful Danish podcast. This is your host, Daniel. I'm a cryptotherapist. I try to improve health in Web3. This is also what the podcast is about, how to stay human in tech, Web3 and Web2. But in particular, it will be mostly like Web3 people that I actually have on, because I feel like that's an overlooked area. And many people don't know much about what's that really and what's going on. And is it that really that much different of an environment? But that's why I'm very excited for my today's guest, Filipa Faria. Welcome to the show, Filipa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Well, thank you for saying yes, because like we just talked about that this is actually your first podcast experience, like not as a listener, but as a participant.
Yes.
And we met at a meetup, I think, where we ended up talking about this. And then I found out that you're actually doing HR in Web3.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can you tell briefly more about like what is that about?
Yes. Basically, we met throughout a meetup with the Unicorn Factory here in Lisbon, where I am being incubated with one of the projects that I'm working with in Web3. So I currently work through Few Legal, which is it's a legal office here in Portugal, where I partner a lot with Louisa Hay, and a lot of our clients are Web3. And what I do with her, it's certain projects regarding HR, where I come in and help them with a couple of challenges. For example, policies that they're trying to adapt here in Portugal according to our legislation, sometimes some hiring. And also on the side, I have another project with a friend, Christina, where we are we are setting up an ecosystem to help people transition from Web 2 to Web 3. Because as you know, in Web 3, there's a lot of, I would say, lack of trust.
Right.
Some people feel very afraid, and also they associate Web 3 with schemes, and I don't think it is at all. Like Web 2 is full of schemes too. So,
Right.
I think it's just a place for a lot of connection, a lot of creativity, and we are trying with knowledge and some of the experience we have in the area to help people navigate this misinformation and fear.
Yeah, and how did you end up coming up with that idea? Like, did you end up yourself just by accident come into Web3, or were you already in tech, or how was
So,
that?
my background is social and organizational psychology. I've worked in Canada for a while, and then I decided to return to Portugal. I worked in banking and a couple of other industries, but I got to a point in my life that I felt, okay, I'm done with this. I need to feel stupid. So, nothing better than a person from HR and organizational psychology jumping into technology. So, I decided I want to do tech recruitment because it was super big at the time. So I started there. I landed with a big project and hiring tech people without ever had hired tech people before for a big company here in Portugal. And then
Wow.
from there, I decided I really enjoyed it because I'm neurodivergent. So my brain finds patterns in things. And so data, technology, agile, connecting a bunch of things really made my brain spark. And then from there, I went into legal. And in legal, I met Louisa, which we were starting a Web3 department. So we ended up actually moving into a different project, and I helped them set up this new office here in Portugal, Few Legal, where she is the head of corporate. And that's where I discovered more. about Web3. I started going into conferences, I started meeting people, and I started getting fascinated by it. And that's when I thought, okay, so there's a lot of fear into this. I had a lot of fear too
What
before.
kind of fear did you have before? Do you remember?
It's basically trust, and it's mostly based on lack of knowledge, because
Mm-hmm.
blockchain and all the tokens, everything seems so foreigner that I think it's a human response. People fear things that they don't know. And as I was slowly getting into the area with someone I really admire and trust, it actually made the spark grow. And that's when I met also Christina, the girl that I am developing this other project. And then we just started talking, and then I was like, okay, I had fear. Most people I talk about have fear. Let's try to solve this problem and put up something that will help people understand based on knowledge and being guided by someone that they can actually trust that has done the transition too.
And if you just had to maybe name one or two things that you could see that you were thinking before and then maybe surprised you after you get to know the Web3 more, what was some of the surprising
Um,
moments?
so I think there's a lot of misconception that in Web3, there's a lot of people that they are just looking to get your money. And actually, what I found was a bunch of creative people and with incredible minds that live their lives um, in truth for who they are. So you see the most wild people in Web3, uh, but in a good sense. At least that was my experience. The other thing was a lot of the concepts are just that. They're just concepts. They like decentralized autonomous organizations, etc. It's just grasping onto the concepts and understanding there might be something very similar in Web3, in Web2 too. We just call it something else. And the third thing for me, it's definitely understanding that working in Web3, it's a lot like it is working in Web3. It just has a little bit more freedom and more space for creativity and more decentralization, which for someone like me, I find it's very appealing.
Do you think that this is actually Web3 attracts more neurodivergence in particular?
I never thought about it that way, but maybe yes, because so for the past 6, 7 months, I've been thinking more and more that we're finally moving into the world where neurodivergency is seen, heard, and understood. And I think with decentralization, we are moving into the world where neurodivergence can actually thrive. Because before, with neurotypicals, especially with education, I was forced to go through an education system, go through a pattern, learn, and I normally say regurgitate information. And now, when and then I actually had the opportunity to go to Canada and study there, and there they foster more the critical thinking, where I can actually I am evaluated on how I use the concepts rather than how well I know the concepts. And Web3 for me, the more I learn about it and the more I get into it, it's kind of like the cherry on top of the cake, where I am given accountability. I need to search for the information and I can actually do something with it because people are creative, they're open, and they're willing to invest. So for me, it's the era of neurodivergency. And as you mentioned, for sure, I think Web3, it's a great ecosystem for us to thrive because it's thirsty for our sort of minds that are more decentralized also.
Yeah. But would you say then also that are there any pros and cons that people that are neurodivergent should be aware of if they go into Web3? Because it can be like an overload, right? In many ways. So how do you handle that or navigate that?
Oh my God, that is a good question. So I work in several projects at the same time. And but I learned that's that is my motor, my gasoline. That's what makes me thrive. So I would say some of the difficulties sometimes is to find balance because for a neurodivergent person, like I have ADHD, everything can be super excited. But I do therapy. So I try to balance that with, okay, you're going too far. Like I do my emotional hygiene with my therapist, which keeps me balanced, not to be, how can I say, like completely eaten
Yeah,
by the
yeah, yeah.
ecosystem. Mm.
You're overwhelmed or
Mhm.
overstimulated. Could
Yes.
could you share an example of like what kind of a hygiene exercise could that be that works really well for you?
Um, so my therapist, he's also a bit outside of the box. So we do we do some exercises that are quite interesting. So we do a lot of breathing. So I'm terrible with names, but he taught me there is some sort of a muscle here
Yeah.
that with certain vocalizations and certain ways on how you breathe and how you project your voice can help you like calm down. So I know sometimes when I go into a bit of a hype, I do have some weird strategies that he taught me on ways to breathe, on how to verbalize certain things that makes this muscle kind of like shake and it helps me ground.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't want to sound too shanty shanty that I'm
No,
not, but
no.
there are a couple of things that really help me.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I'm similar, I guess. Um, and I mean, just to maybe come with a example that I, for example, often use, because since my degree is psychomotricity, which
Hmm.
you can also take here in Portugal, but it
Hmm.
started in Denmark.
Okay.
Psychomotor therapy. It was
Hmm.
started by 3 women, and now it's like in 29 countries, and Lisbon is one of them as well. And it works very much about the body and the mind
Hmm.
dynamic, and that's also what I often focus on with my clients and in my work. That it needs to be concrete. Many of the people that I meet is men, and yeah, it needs to be tangible. Because another hour just for talking maybe not so motivating to consider.
Hmm.
But if you can show like, okay, you have actually some practical stuff also, might be a little bit more not so fearful because intense eye contact and it can be a little bit too much for some people.
Definitely.
So
Just
yeah,
to add on to what you were saying,
yeah,
which is
sure.
something I learned with my therapist regarding that because like I'm pretty like easy, simple, but that's one of the things he tells me in our sessions. It's like like it is difficult for a lot of people to do this, to go into these some sort of exercises that they can feel that are could be cringy or could be a little bit off the box. So if there's something I can add to it, like your therapy space, it's a safe area, right? So nothing is cringy. You're not there to be judged. So for me, it was a bit off in the beginning, but then when I started getting into it, if there is a message I can pass along, is that it might sound weird, it might seem completely off and ridiculous, but you're gonna get a result after, definitely.
Yeah, and that's actually also why that I insist that these different exercises and so on is being done during the sessions,
Mhm.
because again, all right, life is busy or whatever, and you maybe didn't really do the exercise. I get it. So that's why, like, okay, we just do it together. So that's part of the whole framework.
Yeah.
Because then, as I usually say, you get knowledge for your head and experience for your body.
Hmm.
And those two things are hopefully going to be an invitation for you to integrate it into your life as a motivation, like getting a little bit of a peek of like, oh yeah, can it be this simple? Because that's the
Yes.
thing, right? We often overthinking. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like this one. One of the things I actually made in my book, Crypto People's Health Playbook, I have like
Mm-hmm.
different work play sheets,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them I actually made was called you know, when you're judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it funny if you actually move those two words around? It's a mental judge.
Mm-hmm.
So what I made is the inner courtroom, how to win over your
Mm-hmm.
mental judge.
Cool.
Because that's the thing, right? That sometimes we end up making evidence, but the judge, our inner judge, overruled it, or
Mm-hmm.
like that's not plausible, or you know.
Yeah.
So it can be hard then to
Yeah.
actually motivate yourself to do anything. So
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of, in short, made like three different examples of like red evidence, because you, as a defender, trying to propose some evidence
Okay.
in form of experience, or like how valid is this?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing, that the brain will usually discard something that you want to present if there's no data, in this case experience, past experience, that can back up that, okay, I've seen that done before, I guess that could be possible. But like if you say like, yeah, I think I came up with this great idea, could it be nice to do a marathon? If we do a marathon,
Mm-hmm.
um, it could be super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the judge said, like, you haven't done any exercise for like 4 months. How's that realistic? Yeah, but I just thought that maybe I could do it, and I'm very motivated right now. Just like that you were also with when you wanted to do this and this, right? So you can end up shooting yourself down before you even letting yourself to just start out, you know? So that's when I made like, okay, different examples of like, in the red one, for example, could be perfectionism. So red evidence that usually get overruled is like perfectionism, or decision fatigue, or impatient, or self-doubt, and stuff like that. And in the yellow, which is more potentially, the judge is more open to it, it's more plausible, it's considering maybe this could work. Could be like tiny habits, or try to remove friction. For example, if it's training, could you maybe prepare your training shoes, be outside of your door or inside or whatever, but it's easier, more accessible for you, and have different support system that actually can help you to make this a success. Um, and then the green one, the last one, is what the judge actually will approve. These evidence, like, okay, you've done this before, you have used this particular skill that you'll need in this task as well. So I guess, yes, I have evidence to back up that this actually could happen as well again. Um, and you prepared, you did your homework, and you already have checked what you need in order to actually get started. And it's safe, and you even enjoy it, stuff like that. So anyway, it was just to give an example.
It's great.
Um,
It's great. And then it reminds me because I always struggle with going to the gym. And I develop and I think I'm gonna start using it for sure to kind of perfect what how I was trying to fight it because I've been struggling for years to be able to maintain a gym routine. I like it, but it's so easy to fall out of track. So what I started
yes.
doing was if I want to go to the gym in the morning, I'm going to sleep with my workout clothes so that when I wake up in the morning, I have no excuse.
That's so great. Did it work?
It works.
It worked. What? Oh, that's pretty cool.
So now I have pajamas that are workout clothes.
But that's so cool. How did you came up with that idea?
Um, so like in light of what you were saying, um, the brain is designed to keep you comfortable, right? And I was already waking up and being comfortable in bed. And I never really liked pajamas anyways. I always felt that they made me feel like I don't like. And I got a little dog. So in the winter, I didn't want to have to wake up, change clothes, and to put something warmer, to then go get my dog and go walk it. So then I was like, I think I'm going to sleep with some old, like, workout clothes because I know I can shower at night and put on my thing and go to bed. And then I was like, hold on, what if this started being my pajamas? Because that way I can just quickly wake up and walk my dog. And then that started working to walk my dog. And then I was like, how about I use the same technique in order to go to the gym? So now most of my pajamas, especially in the winter, are like yoga pants and sweaters because it's easier.
That's pretty cool. And that's what it's all about also, this like trying to share like different health secrets or like habits, I can say I kind of do the opposite actually, because one of my things, because I can totally relate to like training habits that's actually long lasting, wasn't really a great success, until I found out, because that's the other thing that this exercise in the book also trying to clarify. What are the mental barriers that makes this harder for you to even get started? Are you maybe pushing yourself way too much, too fast? So even though you have high momentum and high motivation in the beginning, slowly it will decline, and now you need more mental energy to try to convince yourself to like, I have to do it, but I don't have the energy for it today. But this exercise, this training, needs the same kind of energy every time. So it's getting harder and harder. So what ended up working with me was actually I used this training video where there's like 3 people that do the same exercise but in 3 different intensities.
Okay.
So there is a dosage feature. Okay, today not so much energy. Okay, I can just use the easy, the low intensity, or just the normal one. I don't have to do the hard
Right.
and more energy required exercise. It's the same exercise. So like, for example, if it was like a push up, the do is one of them. It's like Tabata or HIIT training, it's called. So it's high intensity for like 40 seconds and then 20 seconds rest. And then another exercise, 40 seconds and 20-second rest. So one example could be like a push-up, or like the easy one is he's supporting with his knees, not his feet, and doing the push-up.
Okay.
The normal one is just without supporting the knees, but just a normal push-up. And the high intensity is a push-up, but then a jump in the end when she gets standing up before making another push-up.
Okay.
That ended up being a great change for me. I actually been doing it for 1.5 years now, every day, except when I'm traveling. But other than that, every time I'm here in Portugal, which most of the time I am, I've been doing it every morning. So again, that's the first thing I do, again, to not let myself have time to talk out of that. And back to your example, I don't have any training clothes on. It's just in underwear, and then you can go to shower directly afterwards, and boom,
Done.
your offset is done, And then your brain will reward you. That's the thing. All these past experience that you can use as evidence for your judge will also be a reward when you actually complete and actually succeed, that, yes, you did it again. Okay, great.
Good. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for you sharing. So I also want to match, so it doesn't become too vulnerable only one way. But it's a great example, because I feel like many people can mirror themselves in this and see themselves, especially in tech. I already interviewed some people where they've been nice enough to actually be honest and say like, yeah, no. For example, when it comes to the health side of fitness and physical training, it's not easy for them, because they're just there, working away
Yeah.
on the computer, and they're forgetting their physique. and the sleep health and so on.
Mm.
So it's just really great to get some different perspectives on what could you do,
Yeah.
again, to break down the mental barriers of even just considering getting started.
So my tip is change your pajamas. Ditch pajamas and
Okay.
sleep with your workout clothes. And you have no excuse in the morning to change. You're ready to go.
And if you do have excuse, then try to play around with these evidence to try to maybe label,
Mhm.
do I keep coming up with evidence that
Mhm.
is actually read? Because I keep getting rejected by my judge. So maybe I should try to play around. Could I maybe make some that are at least more yellow? So it's more
Mhm.
possible, it's plausible that this could work. Because then there's a chance for you to maybe come to a point where the mental judge will say, okay, if it's just that, I guess you could do that. I mean, if it's that fast, I mean, sure, you could do it now then. Yeah. If it's only one push up, that was actually one of my attempts, I remember, a long time ago. I did succeeded, but again, I ended up piling too much, so then lost motivation. But I started with one push up, and that was that day. Then the next day, one push up, and then for 1 or 2 weeks, eventually, until my brain was thinking like, this is ridiculous, you can do more. Okay, so then two. Okay, and then a week later, okay, four,
Whoa.
and then 8, 16, 24, and then it added up to like, yeah, that was the thing. I should have put a cap on it because it ended up being, my record was like 300 in one day.
Okay.
But then I couldn't keep it up, of course, and then the motivation and momentum declining, and then yeah, it stopped.
The ups and downs.
So dosage, that was my
Mhm.
secret, I must say. Have some kind of inbuilt dosage, so you have a little bit patient with yourself and self care. That yeah, it's okay that you
Mm.
don't have super maxed out energy every day, but you can adjust, and it's still okay. Because that's the other thing I'll say. I only train 15 minutes per day. 15, 1 5.
Okay.
So, but again, many people, I think it's Tony Robbins who said this, many people overestimate the big effort in few times, You go all in. You didn't went to a gym for a year, but now you're going to this first day, 2 hours, full blown.
Yeah.
It's
You're
crazy. It's not
exhausted.
really good for your body,
Yeah, then you're
and you
exhausted.
just crash.
Mhm. Yeah.
And people underestimate the small things, but that you actually do frequently.
Mhm.
What that actually can do. Because here's a last example tied to this. When I hit around 30, 5 years ago,
Mhm.
you know the thing that you often get told, like, be careful, when you hit around 30, your metabolism going to change a lot. So you maybe need to do something because, yeah, otherwise you're going to gain weight and stuff. And it happened to me without me realizing it. It was only because of, it was in a loving way, sure, but my classmates were starting to tease me, like pointing at my stomach and stuff, like, what is this? I don't know. It was so crazy. In like 3 months, I gained almost 10 kilos. It was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't change any eating habits. I was eating the same stuff. And sure, I didn't train much, but I did walk a lot, which I always had. But clearly, that was not enough anymore. So it was so crazy. Like, what the hell is going on here? So I did started to train, but like, it still didn't really do that much for me. Until then, I added the intermittent fasting. So for me, it can vary as well in this case. But I do now the 16 hours where I don't eat, and then I eat what I want within the 8 hours eating window. That did the whole thing because before then, everything was like a yo yo weight wise.
Yeah.
That was very frustrating. But now, yeah,
Good. It's
all
good
good.
balance. I really like also intermittent fasting. I discovered it when I lived in Vancouver. I don't follow it like every day, but I find like when I'm grounded in my space and I'm able to do that, I don't know, it gave some sense of power from within. I really like it.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel the same, yeah. Um, yeah, so that's definitely some of the things that supports me. Whether like back to the question, like, would you say that there were any like any cons? Like we did mention a little bit of some of the pros that you became aware of in Web
Mhm.
three, like related to neurodivergency. Are there any cons that people should be aware of in particular to take care of themselves if they're decide to go into the Web three space? In your opinion?
Um, well, I think because it's a very fast-paced market and very centralized in technology. But at the same time, it is a bit unfair because it also happens in Web 2, but I think empathy sometimes, because there is so much pressure because you need to raise the investment and you need to make sure, like, so sometimes there can be people can be too focused on surviving and making sure the business doesn't die, that there can be a bit of lack of empathy. That's where therapy for me comes in. I think that would be a con. And another point, especially for someone that works in my area, um, it's dealing a lot with rejection because there is a small niche of people still that actually, based on my experience, that still want to work in the area, that sometimes you're always having to convince people of the basics. So that could be a little bit tiring. But at the same time, I feel this, I can relate to something similar in Web 2, especially here in Portugal, in terms of how people think and how people act and the culture. I feel like compared with my experience in Canada and the UK, etc., that I'm always working down the basic needs of Maslow's pyramid. So I would say in Web3, definitely the two, the two a little bit more difficult to navigate issues. But at the same time, if you work within and you work on yourself and you seek uh, information, I think it's pretty easy to overcome it. Not easy, I wouldn't say easy, but there is a way to overcome
There
it.
is a way. Nice.
Mm.
What do you observe in particular in Web 3 or maybe also Web 2 that is causing stress in your observations?
Um, okay, I don't want to get into politics, but we know there is a bit of a
Yeah.
weird, we're living in a weird moment. And for several years, I've been saying that I don't think the world is in a crisis of like economic, social, or environment. For me, the world is in a crisis of values that automatically generates everything else. So we have been losing a bit of the sense of community. And with capitalism, how things are fast paced, we are kind of like working more towards our own goals and tend to forget that we should give back. And that's something I really learned in Canada. I find like Canada is very balanced in that way. It's very empathetic society. So what I find, especially, I'm going to speak mostly within the Portuguese context. So here we still struggle with understanding that we're working with people. So there's the labor code. The labor code should not be used as, oh, I'm already giving whatever it's in the labor code. I'm sorry, the labor code is a guideline. If you want people to be engaged, make sure you use it as a stepping stone and not something that you're already complying as an obligation. Um, then also, culturally, for example, up north, people are hired to work from 9 to 5. And if you're at work at 5:10, it means something is wrong. And here in Portugal, we still force people. We think it is wrong to leave on time when it is not. You're only paying people from 9 to 5. If you want them to work until 10, make sure you pay extra. Um, and then there is also lots of misinformation in terms of what a position is. So, like a Swiss knife that has all those little
Yeah, extra
piece
features.
extra
Yeah.
features. So in Portugal, generally speaking, in Web 2, there's lack of understanding that an HR director doesn't do payroll. An HR director, it's not someone who is going to necessarily be hiring. So we are wanting to give titles and we don't pay for the titles. And we want people to do admin work with the big titles. So there is a big mess. So when I am helping foreign companies coming to Portugal, a lot of the times what I tell them, whether if they're Web 2, Web 3 also, is a lot of the things we have basics, especially, for example, in North America, like Canada, base yourself on human rights, make sure you pay people fairly. Um, if you bring that into our ecosystem, you're already far ahead of what the Portuguese companies do. Because people are thirsty for empathy. People are thirsty to be listened, heard, valued, and to understand that they can come into your office, come into your business, help you, but you will give it back, not just being completely sucked. Oh. And then I find Web3, it's not, it doesn't have so much of this culture, but the culture could be stress. And it could be also difficulty leading with multiple cultures, multiple teams in different time zones. And that can be difficult for communication, for example.
Right.
So taking advantage of technology also helps. Another project that I'm working on with a friend of mine, we are doing training and development on power skills. So the World Economic Forum came out with a report that says the skills of the future are power skills that back in the day they were called soft skills, but they're not, like critical thinking, empathy, leadership, creativity, etc. So, and we do notice that with technology, Gen Zs, they are the ones that rate the lowest in skills in the job market with critical thinking and empathy, etc. So she has developed like a test. She's a neuroscientist, so we're working on this where you do a test, we evaluate your power skills. And then based on neuroscience, we have a specific training in order to develop these power skills. So what I find these skills are needed not only for regular Joe, the person who is doing the more operational tasks, but also in terms of leadership, because people get so worried and focused on making the profit and delivering that they forget that we're all humans working.
Yeah, that's important, right? Because how do we stay human otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, another guest I had talked about the similar stuff that this she called it the empathy card. That sure, some of these people, sorry, that really had changed a lot of things in our lives, like for example Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or
Mm-hmm.
like other like Jeff Bezos and so on, are all people that also have been described to be kind of harsh leaders and not really, maybe let's say, underdeveloped empathy skills,
Yes.
at least didn't show it that much. Um, and I was
Yeah.
thinking while you said this that maybe that's connected also to the losing sense of communities that you're talking about. We're working more and more, everyone's for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
just like in crypto. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
trusts anybody because it's a
Mm-hmm.
scam, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are scams.
Yes.
Well, not people, but what people are trying to
Try
express
to
or
do. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's deceiving.
Yeah,
And then people can be deceivable as well.
totally. But
Um,
well, in terms
yeah.
of the characters you mentioned, sorry to interrupt, I have a very particular perspective on it. For me, I know we like to give everybody the stamp, but to me, they are clear
Mm,
narcissists. And this is a
mm-hmm.
topic that it's quite, I'm quite familiar of because I'm a daughter and a granddaughter of two narcissistic women. So it is something, it's easier for me to spot and see, and I see how damaging it can be for us. And a
Mm.
narcissist feels very small within to the point that he has the need to show himself bigger than he is, right? You know this better than me because you studied psychology more in depth.
I have
But
a personal experience. It's also valid,
okay,
you know.
okay.
Yeah, but keep going on. It's very interesting.
Um, so, and the first thing we know about narcissists is that they lack empathy. And if you go into sociopaths, like it's even worse. So, um, we have given space and we started admiring people for the wrong reasons. I have actually written something on my LinkedIn about this, that we need to be very careful in the world of influencers to whom we give our attention to. Because back in the day, it was difficult to become famous. Only a certain hand of people had the power, and you would either show on TV, and there were no other outlets. And now there is so much space that everybody can have visibility for the wrong reasons. And then we are thirsty to see whether if it's good or bad. So I think it is very important for us to be aware to whom we give our time and energy and admiration and attention. And within the people you mentioned, for me, it's like they started with something very deceiving, and it was some sort of a manipulation. Oh, I want the world to be better and I'm going to build all these beautiful electrical vehicles. I know I might be canceled with this, but I don't care. And then now you see, like, you see how he's going, and then like just exactly what narcissists do. Look at with Facebook, with the way it started, that the project supposedly wasn't even his, and he start kind of like grabbed it, and then how it is, oh no, I'm building this thing that it's going to connect people and connect the world, and look where we are now. For me, behavior is an algorithm, and you see in these people's their behaviors throughout as narcissistic pathways, at least in my humble opinion.
Hmm. Are there any areas that you see that is more overlooked in tech when it comes to our health and well-being?
um I think it's indirect, but it has a direct effect. It's in politics, at least in the Portuguese ecosystem, because it has an effect. There is very big lack of a word that we don't have in Portuguese, and that I think it's very important, that it's accountability. And it is a word that I adore because
Mm-hmm.
it shows a lot of your values if you're able to be accountable, not responsible, accountable. And we do see with politics that will then become our like health policies, what we can do, what we cannot do, that a lot of these patterns are also reflected there, and then they kind of scale down to the regular Joe life.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, I mean, and that can be kind of hard with all this going on, all this madness outside of yourself. But like, how do you try to stay human with all this in your life?
Uh, For me, it is basically giving the world what I would like to receive. So I don't know, maybe a bit of an oversharing, but I grew up with a narcissistic mother. and a narcissistic grandmother. And I'm an only daughter and granddaughter. And all of this had very big impact on me, to the point that one time, a certain time in my life, I actually tried to commit suicide because everything was it was very difficult to bear. I was in a different country, the relationship wasn't going well, etc., and I don't seem to have the support I needed. And then there was a key point for me here, and I always have in my mind. I don't know. You've watched the movie The Little Mermaid. And there is a part in The Little Mermaid where Ursula does this thing on the ocean where she opens a big like hole and she throws the mermaid there. And I've had depression, and I remember feeling like the feeling of going down that path. It's the worst. It's because you have never hit the floor. And when I tried that, I hit rock bottom. But then I realized something. Hitting rock bottom gave me the chance to finally put my feet on the ground and push up very strongly. So for me to stay human, I always remember that I have more power than I think I have. I might not have power over others, but I have power over how I react and those decisions. And I know what it is to be in rock bottom and wanting just to disappear because I no longer can feel the pain. And that also gave me the power and the knowledge and the accountability to understand I might have some decision making in order not to get there anymore. So now I am very particular on how I put my energy, who I devote my energy, who really makes me upset about something. I barely don't get upset, not because I'm avoiding conflict, but because I'm always thinking, do you really want to focus on this, or do you rather focus on the solution? So, in order to stay human, with a couple of the things I have received, I have been gone through in my life, is I try to be as much empathic as I can and give the world the emotional intelligence I would like to receive, and approach things that way. Even when people are being rude to me, I make a joke out of it because it helps me deal with it better, because I choose not to engage and I don't want to devote my energy in that because I know what it is to be in this place and I don't want to go there again.
Yeah. Oh, I'll just have to. Yeah. Um. Yeah. It's kind of. It makes me think because I remember I saw a movie. Also Disney related to some extent. Yeah, I'll see if I can find it afterwards and put in the show notes as well. Because it's about this boy. I think it's called something like an animated movie or something, but it's about this boy that is not really able to speak for many years of his life, and he seems to be very autistic. Maybe you've seen this movie, but he gets very much into the Disney movies. And then his parents, one of his parents, I don't know if they both are, but one of them are a very renowned journalist. He decides to try to make sort of like use some of his puppets, his teddy bears, Disney characters, and then try to communicate with him, because there's some point where he's a little bit sad, and they found out that he can speak, but it's lines from different Disney movies. And then they try to play a little bit more with that, try to develop his language more and more. And then one scenario is that he's at his room and he's crying a little bit, and then he's trying to like talk to him through this teddy bear, and he opens up to this interaction, and yeah, the story kind of unfolds to like how he actually kind of, yeah, so like becomes like the hero of the sidekicks, because it's similar in many Disney movies. A lot of these different sidekicks actually have a huge role for the main character in order to progress in the story. And he kind of felt like that there was not really any sidekicks or like a hero for the sidekicks, and he needed kind of like a hero for his own feeling of being a sidekick. So maybe he could be both, you know. Maybe he could be the hero for the sidekicks in that way, feeling sort of like a belonging and sort of like a purpose and a strength in that. It's a very touching and beautiful movie, actually. I think you'll like it. I'll definitely find it afterwards and put it in the
Yeah,
show notes
I
and
would
send it
like
to you
to.
afterwards.
Thank you.
Very touching, because it was like at a point where the parents got told by other professionals that, yeah, maybe he's not going to develop any language. We don't know, but it's just taken so many years, and yeah, but yeah. So that's really interesting how Disney sort of becomes his world, and he actually has a lot to offer and want to share, but maybe it's too yeah, introverted or stuff like that. You know that yeah, it can be hard to allow yourself to express. You know, let that shared with the world. But yeah, thank you for sharing, because I mean it is kind of very vulnerable stuff. I remember that I definitely also had different times in my life, and it was like similar epiphanies like you kind of had in describing that. I tended to also use humor a lot, even though maybe it hurt
Hmm.
back then. And then I remember in particular one situation, and I kind of felt like that's, how long am I going to do this? Who am I kidding? You know. Um, and that's when I decided to, like, yeah, maybe instead of just being sad about it, maybe I could be a little bit more humorous about it. And even though it seemed like a little bit hard and a little bit fake, it was literally like fake it till you make it. Um, because of course it was a coping mechanism, but I can see with so many comedians today, that's actually exactly one to one same story they go through. They just decided to make a living of it, you know.
Yep.
I've
Yep.
heard so many comedians said that they actually feel more comfortable to talk about their problems and their life in front of an audience than a therapist. Because they just kind of get used to that this is my stage, this is my hometown, sort of like, you know, this is their hood where they can actually share ideas, and they have the microphone, they're in power. So I think that's sort of like the main thing, like you also kind of describing. What is it that can empower you and keeps you, um, yeah, true to
Grounded.
yourself
Yeah. Yeah.
and grounded?
Grounded. Yeah, definitely. It starts as a mechanism in the beginning, but as you become more of an adult and you play with it, it kind of like you shape it into something different. So I don't know. I like to use humor a lot because it helps me, especially when you're going with like narcissistic parents. Like there's always something that they're going to try to do to criticize you, right? And it gets to a point that you either give in or you find something to diffuse uh, the criticism.
Right.
So my coping mechanism was jokes. So I make jokes out of it. And even today, whenever she comes at me with something, and it's interesting because I come of it with a joke or I make a song or like, na 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 na, to the point she doesn't know what to respond. So
Mm.
she's kind of like, okay, I guess I'm not going to be able to get to her this way.
Where would you advise others in tech that want to start in this way, path, and wanting to improve their health or take care of their health? Do you have any experience or observation that you will say, like, well, then maybe be aware of that and
Hmm.
don't compromise on that, or yeah,
Um, well, I know it might sound a bit of a cliche, but
it's all good.
I I think therapy for me it really helps, and it doesn't need to be a therapist that you're just there sitting and talking to. definitely someone that makes you work, someone that challenges you, because I try to live my life from within to the outside. And if I don't take care of my within, about my trauma, about how I respond to things and how I interact, if I'm in a stressful job, I won't be able to cope with the moments of stress, with maybe a not such positive coworker or a narcissistic manager, etc. So whether if it's Web 2 or Web 3, I find for me, and I've spent thousands of dollars on therapy, but it helps me. I don't know, apart from other things, like we talk about like eating healthy, doing your exercise, but having that safe moment with someone that knows me, that has tools, that might be seeing some angles that I'm not seeing and that challenges me to keep working on how I'm responding on my trauma, I think it helps a lot, whatever the ecosystem is, because you got to work on yourself in order to be have the strength and to build the accountability to deal with the consequences of your actions and the stimulus and the responses out of the world that comes your way.
Yeah, it's a good point. But what did you start with therapy, or where did you get started, and what helped you to get started when it came to like
So,
taking care of yourself or like self
uh,
development?
so I actually have a bit of an off path in that sense because I started studying I, in on 12th grade. I had a great psychology teacher, and I really connected with her and I really liked it. And that's what made me wanted to go and do psychology. But the first year university, I went to clinical psychology and I didn't like it because most of the people in the class and the ecosystem I was in, they were there to treat themselves in order and not to understand and to really make it a mission. So
Right.
I moved away from clinical psychology and I went into social and organizational psychology. And when I was in Portugal, I always wanted to do therapy, but I didn't have funds because also, in order for you to be a good therapist, you need to have therapy, right? Because you need to balance everything that comes, all the stories and everything that comes your way.
Right.
And then when I went to Canada, because it was such a big transition, and then I had like an actual job with health insurance, that's when I finally had the possibility of having of doing therapy. So I started doing it when I was like 22, 23, and I've continued for 20 years. So
Wow. And were there anything that you kind of wish that you maybe knew back then in order to take better care of yourself that you knew now
hmm,
that you didn't then?
yes, that's actually something I was thinking about yesterday. Um, I find like life starts closer to 40. Until there, we're just on a trial mode. Because when you hit 40, I think we have already built a more solid foundation about not only work, but friendships, relationships. You know more or less of what you want. So what I learned, especially coming from a narcissistic mother and etc., was to not give credit to what other people think. Um, I don't mean disregard. I don't mean it in that way, but like in a point of like manage your expectations. So I manage my expectations mostly internally, and I don't expect her to be something or to be the mother I would like to have or to have the behaviors I would like her to have. I just deal whatever comes my way. And I think this is something I wish I have learned earlier. in life and coming to that understanding, because that would have given me far more self-confidence and far more power to deal with everything that comes my way. Because then you start thinking, if the people that should care for you the most are the ones who sometimes put you in danger, even inside your own home with like silly behaviors, Jesus Christ, what happens to the world out there? So when you understand that, like, certain things are how they are, you're not going to change them. Just manage how you deal with it rather than how you wanted it to be and come your way. It would have
Mm.
helped me not to live in fear for many years as I have lived before.
Do you have a particular role model back then?
Um, I would say not one actual role model, but in Canada, people used to tell me when I started this discovery movement, here she comes. Because I had this sentence that was, oh, there's a TED talk about that. Oh, there's a TED talk about that. Oh, so for me, it was learning a lot of things like Guy Winch with emotional hygiene, even Simon Sinek, Start With Why. I I'm a big fan of Brene Brown and even Tony Robbins. I think there's certain things that I don't agree with, but like master your emotions. And also, there is a sentence that came from him that I really enjoyed, which was um, think the blame them for the bad, but thank them for the good. I think that's how it is, how he voices it. Because at least with the bad people in your life, you learn how not to be. And that is something good that comes out of it. With all bad leaders and all bad managers I had throughout my professional life, it allowed me to make a mental note of what when I'm in your position, this is something I don't want to do. This is someone I don't want to be. So I don't think just one person I admire, but very different people in different moments of my life.
Mm.
When I entered the discovery or the healing process, whatever we want to call it, that really helped me.
Do you have one today in particular that you will say is more present in your life?
Yes, I really, really like the teachings of Brene Brown. I think she leads with empathy.
Yeah.
She uses data to talk about things. I've read all of her books and seen all of the shows. I think she is what we call an influencer because she's not trying for people to sell things, to buy things, or to have more makeup or to have the perfect body. She's helping you with tools and knowledge and information based on research and data that you actually can apply in your daily life and learn from and pass along.
Do you have a favorite book of her? I mean, I remember I listened to The Power of Vulnerability
Mhm.
by her as an audiobook. Yeah, I will link to that as well. But do you have something in particular that you really like?
Um, oh my God, with my dyslexia, names are terrible for me, but I really liked I think it's called Dare to Lead, something like that. It's
Dare
about
to Lead.
leadership.
Okay.
I think but I will definitely not know the name, the complete name. I see the cover in my head, but I don't remember the name. But I think it's
Okay,
Dare
okay,
to.
that's good. I mean, as I definitely see that it is that the one Dare to Lead, brave work, tough conversations, whole hearts.
Dare to Lead. Yes, I think it's Dare to
Dare
Lead.
to Lead. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. I'll add that too as well. Okay, okay. And this is a little bit more, yeah, indirectly it can be a funny one, but it can also just be in particular like, what has been one of your worst health secrets and how did you change it?
My worst health secret.
Yeah, like, oh, this happened. Well, wasn't really that supportive, but I realized it and then I changed it. But yeah,
Oh my God, that is a really tough question. Let me think.
I can start off if you
Yes,
want. Yeah.
yes, let's do that.
um, One of my worst health secrets was, I think, for example, the thing of like starting out without any preparation or realism or yeah, dosage, like too much, as a too heavy and all that, too soon, instead of building it up. Because yeah, I can see with a lot of stuff that I tried to do and that failed was usually because of those things. Um, when I was a little bit more realistic and me again trying to address the different mental barriers, but also less is more. The more that actually, like, sometimes I have a tendency to make things too big in my head, and then I have to start. And yeah, then you're already tired because damn, that's a lot of work.
Yes.
So I would say that's definitely one of them. Maybe more
Mhm.
like a mental unhealthy secret, but I can definitely see that that has blocked me for so many things that could have worked out or have been somehow more pleasant to do if I was a little bit more patient and more slow and a little bit more not so hard, like the self-talk sometimes, like that's what often people also hear. But I must say that in my experience, yeah, it can be very true as well, that again this inner judge is usually the most ruthless towards yourself, and never really other people. Oh, she didn't mean that way, probably. And yeah, you don't know what she went through. And yeah, it could be. And, but when it comes to yourself, no mercy. Straight to jail. Straight to jail. So I would
Yes.
say it could be also stuff like that, I will say, when you think about health secrets that maybe didn't
Mhm.
really supported you that much
I
back then.
remember one now. I remember one now. Someone many years ago talked to me about the X effect, which is if you make a list of the things you want to do, and then you have the days of the week, and every time you accomplish it, you go and you put an X. So I came out with this thing I wanted to do, like wake up and do meditation and do exercise and do this and do that and and put an and by like day 6 or 7, I was feeling so overwhelmed because some days my body was not going to wanting to do exercise, or I was not ready to, like, I disconnected from that book and I felt like I had to read 15 minutes before doing this and I have to do this. Like, for me, that was probably the worst health tip I received that I tried to implement. It became too stressful, especially for someone with ADHD. It was a disaster. I completely crushed it, scrapped it, and put it in the garbage. I think you need to focus on, yes, building structure, it's important, but be empathetic with yourself. Like, especially as being a woman, like we have to be like that Barbie movie. You need to be thin, but not too thin. You need to put makeup on, but not so much makeup on. You need to be direct, but not too direct, or you're rude, or like. So the F effect, I respect it, but I would never use it again because it became a bit too much. Apart from the pressure that the world already puts in us, I added my own pressure of wanting to be something, to get somewhere that it probably makes no sense. I just need to exercise, yes, more than I'm doing right now, but I'm not competing to be an athlete.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that will be another unhealthy habit that I definitely also used to believe in, that that is never enough. There's always something, and in that way, tied to another unhealthy one was that never really celebrate when I finally achieve different stuff, because there's already 10 other stuff on the list. So why bother? We also have this. So, but if you think about that through your whole life, you never end up celebrating anything then. What was the point then? So yeah, it's a really good point that you're coming up with. What would you then say on the contrary that was one of your best health secrets that you created, and how did you discover it? Like again, I can start if you want,
Yeah, you can go ahead.
unless you
I'll go
already have
after.
it. Okay,
I think
okay,
I do. I think I
okay.
do, but you can
Then go
start.
on.
Go ahead. Okay, I go.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So, um, for me, it was actually learning how to eat and take advantage of the food. So, I was born and raised in Portugal, and for a while I moved and I lived in Vancouver in Canada. And in Europe, we do have the best products because the European Union, etc., they kind of like regulate how much like GMOs can come in and Monsanto, etc. But Vancouverites are like the health experts. So in Portugal, most of our meals are based in protein and carbs. I'm not a fan of Portuguese food. I'm always like completely killed by Portuguese people every time I say this because there is a big difference between the food being tasty and being nutritious. So when I moved to Canada, I learned how to build more nutritious meals and how to take advantage of food and shop for labels, for example. And then now that I'm back in Portugal in Europe again, I can bring that skill that for me, I know I have a chronically ill sweet tooth, but I do know that overall the choices I make that change my taste buds are far better because what most people find it's not flavorful. I like it because I I understand the nutritionist value that, for example, an apple with peanut butter has rather than eating bread with cheese, for example, or going to eat a pastel nata. So something for me was understanding the food, the nutritional value of things, and taking advantage of it, especially with the quality of products we have in south of Europe.
Nice. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I mean, if I had to take one, and this was actually a little bit of a aha moment for me as well, but that was probably, again, it sounds maybe a little bit alternative, but that was actually learning that I was eclectic. I think it's what it's called. You know, with like you can eclectic is like where you can take different beliefs, ideas, or methods, combine it into something that already exists, and
Mhm.
take something from here and something from there and create it into a third thing, and that becomes a new thing. So, for example, and it was kind of an invisible ability I could see, but I've kind of done it with the crypto and therapy. Not many people do that. I did it with, which also in the book actually, I call it the house body. How you can see your body as what it was supposed to be, right? Your home, your first home. Like, you know, with the saying, like, you can buy a house, but you can't buy a home. You can buy food, but you can't buy health. You know, like, you can buy the bed, but you can't buy proper sleep, you know, quality. Like, it all goes around. And yeah, I must say that that ability to sometimes take things again back to the mental judge in order to maybe take something that, I mean, I could make it work because if I take these skills that I normally are really good at when I'm in this position or in this environment, or I do this task, then I'm in a different state, or I can better do things. Okay, maybe I can take that state and activate it in another area where I actually need some support. Um, I would say that's also being an eclectic person, being able to do that. Um, yeah, I really like all these things we're covering. It's amazing.
Yeah, because
I
I
hope you
think
enjoy
that
it as
it's
much as I do.
I
Go on.
am, and what you're bringing on, it's like critical thinking, which is so important, right? Because you're able to collect different pieces of different puzzles and make a brand new puzzle, and that is super cool. And it's amazing that you're aware of that within yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And likewise, you seem like you've done a lot of work as well. It's amazing. I really think that many people are going to get a lot of value from this
Thank you.
episode. Are there any area around your health that you're still working on that you want to maybe ask the next guest about how they're working on this?
It's waking up and exercising on a daily basis. I've struggled with that all my life. I understand the benefits of it, but I think there is like a little button or a switch on the
Mm-hmm.
brain that I still need to crack. But it doesn't need to be every day. But I go up and like I'll exercise for a week and then I'm like, I don't want to do it. And then I won't do it for 3 weeks and then I'll come back to it. It's
Mm.
definitely something that can help at least someone like me with ADHD to incorporate this into the routine and really take advantage of it.
Okay, okay. And would that be like a question you would like to give forward to the next about how they're
Um,
maybe
yeah, it
working on
could be
this?
the yeah,
Okay.
how they maintain themselves stable and active within the Web3 ecosystem and what tools, if they are really onto and keen in exercise, what tools did they use to make that a passion of theirs?
Hmm. That's a good point. Okay. I'll move forward to the next, yeah, with this. A little side note, back to the physical exercise example. What also makes this work really well for me, because I'm actually quite proud of myself for this, because I can really relate to this. One of the other key things that I learned, because that's the other thing, right? You can say so much and hear it from so many people, but if it really doesn't turn your buttons and like trick yourself to actually do something good for yourself, it's not really worth it. So many people told me, maybe they told you too, oh, you just gonna push yourself, you know. Yeah, it's hard, you know. You just have to push yourself. I don't know why I'm going to sound like a weird sort of Sylvester Stallone, but like, it doesn't matter how many times you get pushed. You get what matters is how many times you get
Gym
up.
voice.
A gym voice, yeah. But like many people tend to over focus on like, yeah, it hurts, it's annoying, it's not pleasurable, you just have to deal with it. Afterwards, the horrible 1 hour training, then it will feel good. Yeah. But since I'm not going to start, how's that going to work? How's that going to be useful for anything? So I went the other direction and then looked into like, okay, so clearly it is important for me that is to some degree enjoyable, fun. So what I did, and I actually still do this, because you can imagine if you have failed so many times trying to attempt to do something good, but you'll fail once again, you have little to no motivation or belief. Even though you probably believed in Santa Claus for 10 years, you couldn't believe yourself for 10 seconds to get out of the bed to run, but here we are. So I really needed that in order to change my association with training. Okay, like again, the unpleasantness, like I came up with two different motivation types. That's also in the book. You can be you can use pleasant motivation or unpleasant motivation. Just like that, you can be unpleasant grateful or unpleasant grateful. So for people, for example, very briefly with the side note, oh, you're just too positive for me. Oh, you can see everything is nice and dancy, you know. Okay, sure. If that's too much, then start to at least think about 3 or 5 things that you are unpleasant grateful for. So things that didn't happen to you, that is not in your life, and that you didn't have to experience. That you're happy for that. Oh, at least the mafia is not after me. Or at least I don't have 5 days to live and then die. Well, at least I don't have, so on. That's things that you are unpleasant grateful for. That great. At least I don't have that problem. I'm actually in a safe location. I'm not getting bombed any second, and I feel fairly safe, and life is actually pretty okay. I can breathe, fresh air, and all that. Where you can see probably the natural contrast, pleasant gratefulness, is things that you do have in your life, that you do have to experience, and that you're actually happy that you have in your life. You can do the
Gratitude.
same with motivation then. So,
True.
unpleasant motivation. Oh, I don't want to be fat, and oh, well, I guess it will be healthy, but it's hard. But yeah, I guess I have to do it. I just have to suck it up. Stuff like that. Uh, that's unpleasant, and that can work as well as a motivation for some. But again, one of my motto has always been, why choose if I can have both? But in this case, I started to only use the pleasant motivation. Okay, one of them were because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of them is actually comedian podcast. So very few. I have some more favorites than others. I decided this, from now on, is only audio candy for training. I can only listen to it while I train, not a minute later after I have trained. If it's 40 minutes, too bad, or too good. You have something to look forward to tomorrow. That my brain started to associate, now I can train. No, but more like, okay, let's train, because then I can listen to that favorite podcast that I enjoy. So the video that I have where I can see the people training, take the audio off, and then I
Okay.
can play the podcast in the background, because I didn't need to hear what they were saying. I just needed to see what they're doing, then do the same. And then in the beginning, I tend to focus more on the podcast than the training. I did the training, but I enjoyed the podcast. And then slowly, as I again created more evidence that, okay, this might actually work, I started to associate training a little bit more positively because of the enjoyable add-ons of the comedy podcast. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Thank you. That's a good
Yeah,
tip.
welcome. Okay, this is maybe also a little bit. Let's see. What have you automated in your life that improved your life for the better? And in what way does it express itself in your life? I know it can sound a little bit like, oh, I'm a robot now. But I'm just saying, like, are there certain things that you put in a certain system that actually really supports you, that you don't need to use so much mental capacity on more than you did before?
Hmm. I think I'm going to go with something very basic right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is payments. With a neurodivergent ADHD person, where there is all like, oh, there is electricity, there is this, there is
Yeah,
this, there is this, there is
it's
this.
everything. Yeah.
I know I'm not going to be sharing massive technology because the things I'm using it would be a bit off for conversation now, but it's things I don't need to put my energy in. Water, electricity, like, everything I can think of that I have to pay, that I know it's going to be that, and I don't want to deal with it. So I go there and I make direct deposits. So I don't want to deal
Nice.
with it. Um, the other thing, I'm not doing it right now, but I'm trying to build with a friend at work, is because I'm generating more and more content on LinkedIn on topics that are very important. And I do write my own posts, but I always ask AI to help me with them. And being dyslexic, I've in school, my teacher used to make fun of me when I was reading out loud because I would mix words, etc. So over the course of the years, I developed a big resistance in writing because I have spelling mistakes, etc. But embracing my neurodiversity and bringing AI, uh, ChatGPT or other tools really helped me gain confidence because I put whatever I want to say and he helps me make a structure out of it. And then I revise it once again. And then now I feel more confident with posting. So I'm trying to build something that it's a bit automated, not to write for me, but where I can actually put on the topics and the ideas of things I have, so that with that I can generate more content. I can't remember the name of the tool that we are using at work, but he's helping me with it, where we put my ideas, my stuff, we generate a couple things, it stays with the schedule and also with ChatGPT, etc. Because
Nice.
with a neurodivergent mind, we can lose track of ideas and thoughts and creativity. So this is something I'm trying to automate and
Yeah.
keep track of more.
I use personally buffer.com. No
Mm-hmm.
referral, but
Okay.
like it's a free tool that I use, and yeah, you can. The free version is like 14 days you can
Mm-hmm.
schedule out, so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. I
Um,
have Notion. I use Notion a lot
yeah.
to put like on a backlog and stuff, some more like an agile. But I'm starting to feel I want something that works more with me in a more automated way. So he
Mm,
automates a couple of things at work. So Francisco, so I'm trying to pick his brain for that.
nice. That's pretty cool. In your perspective, what would you say that will be essential for us to be aware of from now on and in the future in order to stay human in tech?
I think we need to work on a muscle that we have been forgetting, which is empathy, emotional intelligence. I think it's something with the era of technology we have been putting on the side because we want to automate things, because we want to make things fast, because we want to do the, but then we forget about empathy. And I think it's something that's why I am also doing this project with Filipa with Power Up. And we do training on empathy and we have built a test, etc. Because in the era of technology and AI, we need to stay more human. And there are certain behaviors and ways of being that artificial intelligence, it's not going to be able to mimic the same way. And for me, in my humble opinion, empathy and emotional intelligence, it's one of them. And so we need to continue to train and develop and work on this muscle, that it's going to be so important where everything is getting technological and automated for sure.
And what would you recommend in particular in order to train and maintain that EQ as emotional intelligence?
Um,
And then particular
well,
books or courses you will recommend?
yes. Well, definitely um,
Brene
therapy.
Brown? Oh, yeah, therapy.
Therapy. Definitely Brene Brown. She is big on empathy. She actually makes a big difference between empathy and sympathy, and she has a very
Yeah,
good video. I'll send it to you after. She
thank you.
talks about eating a banana nut muffin, so it's actually a funny video.
Okay,
Uh, with Power Up, for example, we do have the test that we're going to make it public soon, but you can take the test and you can evaluate it. And also, we do training for organizations, and
nice.
empathy is something that can be trained, can be stimulated, unless we're talking about a pathology. Okay, we're talking about this in, I would say, non-pathological field. But empathy in the work environment, it's something with the stimulus of certain chemicals in your brains based on neuroscience. It's something that can be worked on. So maybe I will invite you to look at our website, at Power Up. Uh, we have written that we were going to be launching in September in English a white paper about empathetic leadership, which I think it's going to be crucial
Nice.
as AI continues to develop. So we will do an
Yeah,
event closer to the Web
nice.
Summit
Cool.
about that in English. So we've already done it in Portuguese here in Lisbon. And it's something I would definitely recommend for you guys to take a look on and study more about the topic. Because like Dr. Gabor Mate talks a lot about it too. Um, so there's lots of resources out there that we can continue. And ultimately, being empathetic, it's putting yourself on someone else's shoes. So, and we react more than we should. So smile a little bit more. And when someone honks you in traffic, I always think, oh, maybe he really has a bad stomach and he needs to go to the bathroom. So I'm going to let him through, you know.
Nice.
Use empathy to make your life easier in any shape or form you can.
Nice. Oh, that's a nice one.
Sorry, maybe a bit unexpected.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, that's what I like about these conversations. Like the more authentic and just loose it can be, the more organic we can go in those areas that also matters.
Yeah.
So yeah, really like it. I can really, yeah, yeah, I can reflect a lot of your perspectives. Do you have any work in general that you would like to share, like certain apps or books or services or workshops or yeah?
Um, so maybe in the context of Web3, I will
Mm-hmm.
probably, because I know it can be very tough. So maybe I'll go a little bit into more business because we have talked a lot about a couple of those resources. I would say I would like to share the work that Few Legal is doing in becoming one of the most startup friendly legal offices in Lisbon. And I think we've created a business model that it's large legal as a service that works very much such as a software as a service, because it is very important to have a legal professional by your side when you're starting your business. So definitely I would recommend for you guys to check the work of Few Legal and Louisa. She has been doing a lot of stuff in terms, for example, with Nika and regulation for crypto, Web3, etc. She's very professional and she has been helping a lot of organizations with all her knowledge in Web3. Um, Also, definitely all of the work of Brene Brown, more in the personal side. I think she is a true influencer, like I said, and she does really add a lot of value with research based information. So any of her books, Dare to Lead, definitely something I would recommend. Definitely recommend for people to read your book, Daniel. I think you are doing a great job um, within this ecosystem that I think sometimes it is such based in distrust and doesn't have to be. So we need to work within in order to be able to deal with that. And I would also recommend for people to check Power Up and how empathy and power skills are so important in the tech world, and how helping your teams to develop these skills for the future of work, it's so important. And it's not spending, it's an investment for sure, because a lot of the things that are consequences in organizations in early development projects, they don't show up on your Excel spreadsheet or your CRM, ERP, whatever, or your booking, whatever you're using to track your data and your P&L, etc. All of these are invisible costs, and we need to start looking more and more to the impact of the invisible costs because they have an impact on the results, and most people doesn't think about it. And
Yeah.
something else I would recommend, if you guys wanna hear read to someone that talks about some of the Portuguese job market things that we need to improve. with solutions and fractional HR and the impact of it in the organizations, go to my LinkedIn. So a little bit maybe of self-promotion, I don't know. But
That's all good.
I'm a bit, I feel like I have been creating some space for us to think about things here in our ecosystem that really need to be talked about. And Portuguese people overall tend to want it to be diplomatic and not talk about things. But if you don't talk and you don't acknowledge the problem, you can't improve. And this is basic in psychology. So we need to talk about some of the issues and points for improvement we have within our job market and our society in order to work on them and improve.
Right. Yeah, that is pretty essential, right? We just have to start somewhere, even though maybe there's a long way to go, but one step at a time, you know? Are there something that you found or began doing recently that is having a positive effect in your life overall that you discovered, you're particularly interested in or passionate about right now?
Definitely in my relationship to talk about things. Honestly, talk about things and save time to express how appreciative you are of the other person. Thank them for things that sometimes we take for granted, and definitely be candid in recognizing and be grateful and talk about things. I think it is something that has really improved in my life and within my relationship.
Nice. Hmm. Yeah, I'm almost out of question now. But do you have some questions? I always feel like it's always nice to give at least the option. If you have certain things that you actually wanted to ask or say, or
I do. I do have
yeah,
something I am curious because you're a therapist. What do people in this ecosystem come to you and actually not complain, but they have more difficult with and they need your help mostly? Is there a permanent topic?
well, I mean, a lot of the people are private investor people in crypto. I mean, for most people, it's still kind of a bear market. So in the book, I have mapped out the different stress signs that appears in a bear market and in a bull market. So I've been gathering for years, and it's kind of nice because it also helps me, but also my clients, to actually get a real, concrete black and white paper to see that okay, it's not just me. There's other people that also have this and going through this. And a lot of these things, like you also mentioned it a little bit earlier, there's a lot of these things that's kind of invisible. There was one guy I met at the NFC conference in Lisbon. He said like it's like invisible enemies. And yeah, so what people often come with, I think in particular the invisible things, because what I have done both in a bear market and in a bull market, I've mapped out physical, psychological, and behavioral stress signs, and then I go deeper on each sign. But the whole book is actually designed like a menu card. So even though there is a lot, it was intended to simply pick and choose of like how can we gather your order, and then we can work through it as it's the most urgency, what feels most in your life at the moment. And back to your question, it's like a lot of like sleep disturbances, increase stress, like increased heart rate, eye strains. Those are more like physical stuff. And of course, also overloading and overwhelming, kind of overlapping to psychological signs, where there it's more like, some kind of can feel some kind of degree of a burnout, because this thing of like keep postponing your life. Many people kind of pause their life, and they don't know how long it's going to take, and if it's going to be worth it. Who knows? Maybe the coin you really want to do something never does. And would that be worth it then, for all the stress and the emotional toll it's probably going to inflict. Maybe not. So self-doubt and like impatient, they can do like revenge trading and stuff like that. But I will also say, like, overall of many of these stress signs is also just a simple fact of actually be able to talk about this with someone that actually knows what this is about. Because if you go to a traditional therapist, sure, they heard you saying, I cannot sleep. That's what they understood, or that I have stress or overthinking. But they don't necessarily know the whole language and the world and what might trigger all these things, and can actually intervene more directly into that environment. And that's where I can see that this is very a unique niche to tap into, and it's not easy. But sometimes the most right thing is not always the easiest.
Yeah, for
And I feel
sure.
like that's the case with Web3 in particular. But it's always also been a great tool for me, actually, because there's a
Hmm.
lot of these things that were quite invisible to me too. Sometimes you will feel that, why do I keep making the same mistakes? What is it that plays with me? It seems like the same thing, but it isn't. Okay, this time it was more like greed. The other time was more like fear of missing
Yeah.
out, or this time was the stubbornness of like, no, I want this to work. I will wait no matter what, instead of accepting and then continue. So there's so many things, but again, how are you going to know? How are you going to create more awareness if you're working on your own? You don't trust anybody. You don't work with anybody. You don't talk about these things. You just let it build up inside you. Of course, it's going to be invisible enemies then.
Totally. I really like that concept of invisible enemies. Never thought about it. It's a good takeaway.
I'm telling you, there's so much that has been created, again, as an eclectic mind, because I've been in the same thing. I know
Hmm.
what it's like from personal experience, but I'm actually also a therapist. But that's also a weird schizophrenic paradox of like, I'm also just a human, but
Hmm.
I'm also trying to be aware and trying to be vulnerable and trying to be in it, not just let's just jump over this and let's see how can we fix this. Sometimes there is also a value in just be with it for a while, and in that, like, that's what I really find touching in a lot of the stuff that you shared today, with your experience as a kid and so on. Yeah, crazy that you had to go through it, but amazing that you did and what you made out of it. And as a It's those cases where many people, maybe if they're not with it and not really trying to get something out of it that's useful and meaningful, um, it would be sad to just say like, oh, then it doesn't have any value and it was just kind of a waste of time and it was a mistake. Well, not necessarily. But if you see it like that, sure. But if you change how you see it, it can also change as well. So it's never too late to try to see what could the value of this actually be. That's why I really like that. Yeah, that becomes a a little bit woo, I guess. But if you know Neil Donald Walsh, he made the books of A Conversation with God. But if you're not religious, but just see it more as a dialogue between two entities or whatever it was, it really covers a lot of interesting topics. And one of the things that talked about was like this: if what if this all this is just in my head or imagination? Well, what would be the difference? It's simply just another tool to be able to interact and maybe get a new perspective or input for you to do another thing that you didn't consider before. So if life is a simulation, you could see that if that's an illusion, well, does that mean that nothing was real and then it's not really meaningful or whatever? Well, if you see it like that, sure. But you could also see illusion has a creative tool that you can sculpt into the shape and form that you would like to. until you don't, and then you can change the form and shape. And in that way, it becomes a creative extension of you expressing life in the grandest vision that you have until you get a new vision. Yeah. Yeah, I went on a little bit of a rant here, but
No,
what
but
was
it
the
was
question
good.
again?
I liked it. I liked it. It was what you see the most coming as the most permanent topic that people are in need of help in Web3. But you did respond to my question. Yeah, there's a variety of topics. I did. I was listening.
Great. Do you have any more
Yeah.
questions or thoughts you would like to share? Or?
No, I think for me, I would just like to end with something that is my mantra every time I kind of freak out, which I think to myself is doing the best I can with the tools I have. And
Nice.
so sometimes it helps me.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, if people wants to reach out to you and work with you, if you're open to it, what would be the best way
Yeah.
for people to reach you? Is that
So
LinkedIn or?
mostly LinkedIn, it would be the best. Filipa
Okay.
Faria, definitely. I'm still building the page for the career transition project with Christina, but when I have that, I will share it. We're in the process. We already have all the content. We're just putting everything out there with proper due diligence. So probably around September, we will have it all
Nice.
launched with the exercises and the little ecosystem. But LinkedIn for now, it's the best. It's where I'm more active and more present on a daily basis.
Okay. Nice. And yeah, I'll link it into the show notes below. And do you have anything you say at last, as last message or advice for the listeners or viewers?
Well, I just think we need to continue to be kind to each other because whatever is coming our way doesn't seem to be that easy. And we just need to continue to approach it everything with kindness and empathy and go from there. Brace,
Amen.
brace yourselves.
Yeah. Hold tight. Extra tight.
Yes.
Yeah, and stay human. But that
Yes.
seems like a great way to, yeah, say thank you for joining. It was an amazing talk.
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed it.
Me
And
too.
yeah, take care
Thank
and yeah,
you too.
talk to you
Thank
another
you.
time.
Thank you for having me and good luck with the continuing of your work and let's make sure people read your book. It's a great value.
Thank you. And yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Joyful Danish. Stay human. Is it even still possible to stay human? Maybe it's not too late.